Hi again, everybody. Welcome into another edition. This is Cross Functionality, the show connecting coaching, baseball, softball, male, female, hosted by former college baseball and softball players. Here we are, episode 50, talking today about the power of visualization for athletes. Good to have you along wherever you may be listening, Apple, Google, Spotify, whichever platform, or watching the show on the Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. I couldn't do it without my friend and co-host, though, softball national champion at the University of Alabama and current day renowned coach, Cassie Reilly-Boccia. Cassie, what's going on?
Oh, nothing. Just apparently got the light shut off on me. So if you're watching on YouTube,
Yeah, you had some. The lighting was all on you for a second, so it was good.
all is good.
Yeah, for someone who has constant lighting problems over here on this side of things, I'll tell you what. On the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast with Jake Epstein, he has the perfect background and perfect lighting. I still can't figure out how. He can't figure out his microphone half the time, but he can figure out the lighting. We're talking today power of visualization, and we're going to talk about types and the tactics of visualization and things to do pre-game wise. A little story here I wanted to share with everybody, though. I remember I started to learn about the power of visualization. I don't know, Cass, if you did this in high school, but your senior class goes to Disney.
No.
And okay, well, it was like a senior trip thing, and you go to Disney World. And I remember we went to Disney World for the week right before the start of my senior season in high school. This was in 2008. And I remember on the plane ride back, I had a window seat and I was reading the book, The Mental Game of Baseball. And I remember that was the first time that and I had success up to that point, but that was the first time that I learned about visualization, and I applied that to my senior season and went out and obviously had a great year. But that was when I first learned in 2008 about the power of visualization for athletes. And sometimes athletes learn this way too late, as I did. And today we're going to discuss the types, because there are different things and different elements of visualization that you can do as an athlete that could help your on-field performance, and then just kind of getting into that routine as well, doing it pre-game. Because when you think about visualization, it's such a unique tool, and it's something that could really help you. But a lot of athletes, I don't think, and coaches for that matter, don't really know where to start when it comes to that power of visualization and how to get their athletes to do such.
For sure. And, funny enough, my first exposure was actually not even in the softball world. It was hearing about Michael Phelps and hearing about how his coach used to just say, Michael, put the tape in, because he used to just lay down at night and just think about all these different possibilities. And it made me realize, I was like, wait a second, I feel like I've done that before, but I didn't really realize I was visualizing. So I think once you realize, hey, hang on, it's almost like this daydream state, right? It's almost like this ability to just put yourself in situations in your mind and have a little bit more control over some of the emotions you might start to feel in a game, start to get exposed to them sooner rather than later. Then all of a sudden you get in a game and you almost feel like you've experienced it before. It's not a shock when something happens in competition. So it is an immensely powerful tool. And I think it's one of those things that I think gets brushed to the side a little bit, because again, it's not tangible. It's not sets and reps. It's not, oh, okay, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes and I know it's going to work. It's a lot of hard work of realizing, did I get into it? Did I start to feel something here? It's difficult to do, for sure.
Yeah, and when I was researching this topic, and the first thing that came up for me when I was researching this, the power of visualization, guided visualization, but there's also the solo visualization as well. There's a difference between the two. Let's talk about the difference between guided and solo visualization for athletes.
Sure. And if anyone is familiar with meditation, it's probably very similar, but a guided state is whether you're listening to a recording or maybe you're with a performance psychologist or someone who is working with you, where they are having you close your eyes, having you get into that relaxed state, and then taking you through a scenario. And, someone who does a great job of it will provide immense detail. What time of day is it? What color's your uniform? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? It's really trying to almost give you this VR experience, right? Where once you close your eyes, you're able to put yourself in the shoes of who you're going to be in the future. And then you start to run through those scenarios, and you might have a guided visualization that is trying to visualize future success. Maybe it's revisiting a situation that happened in the past that's limiting you from future success. So messing up on a really big stage or having something happen that you haven't emotionally gone through yet. Or maybe you're visualizing future failures and how you're going to react to them. It's very interesting, the different types that you can do. If you're not doing a guided scenario, maybe that's just you closing your eyes, trying to visualize the night ahead. But I would always recommend it just seemed to have gone well for myself as well as my athletes. If there was some type of structure, if we're like, all right, we're facing a right-handed screwball pitcher tonight, and this is what we're visualizing. And instead of just being like, where's my mind going to take me? Because sometimes, closing your eyes without any guardrails leads to, all of a sudden you're thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner later, and you're like, wait a second.
The action meditation there, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. If you're not really truly focused, and when you're meditating, you're not really getting anything out of it at all. That's why maybe it's best to meditate before you go to sleep, because your mind is clear. Maybe doing it in the middle of the day, doing it right after work, doing it even early in the morning might be a little bit tough because your mind is racing now, and you're getting things.
Right. And I think it's going to depend on, it's going to be different for different people, because some people who have used the practice of meditation could calm the racing mind with the practice of meditation. Right. So I think it's not, visualization doesn't have to be, or meditation even doesn't have to be a light switch of success or failure. It can be, you're just you're participating in the practice of it. And that is going to, yield the rewards in different ways. It doesn't have to necessarily be that was a perfect visualization session, and I got better at that. It really is going to feel different on different days depending on what you're working on.
Well, you mentioned in there too, like a VR type experience, and that brings. I'm going to skip down here a little bit on the types of visualization, but it brings up the first person visualization versus the drone visualization.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about first person, you're seeing your visualization, you're seeing that perspective from the first person. But then when you talk about a drone perspective of visualization, you're almost having an outer body type experience if you're doing visualization correctly and you're watching yourself succeed, right?
Yeah, sure. And you know what? The first person visualization is very difficult for some people, myself included, to get into. However, when I used to picture, I'd actually started off first of what would it have looked like if I was watching film? Like, if someone was filming this, how would I look? And then that led to, okay, well, what if, it's almost like that. I feel like in video games, you can have those different views, right? You can be the first person, or you can kind of zoom out like a camera right above your head. Well, what would that look like? What would your swagger look like? What would your confidence look like? Your posture, how calm, confident, and control you'd look. And that is so powerful to try to control your character, essentially. And then as you get deeper and deeper and more, I guess, focused into that visualization, then you can start to get into that first person mode, which I think will be, probably the most effective for you actually seeing, pitches, or trying, even as a pitcher, trying to visualize facing a hitter, things like of that nature.
Right. So when you were doing it, and we'll get to what your routine was back in the day, but when you were visualizing yourself, or was it more third person, more drone in this case, or was it more first person?
I think if I go back to like my junior, senior year when I first started dabbling with it, I think it was very much so zoomed out. It was as if, and it's funny, I actually tried to videotape myself as a hitter from I think 4 or 5 different angles to make a circle all the way around myself, because I thought if I could watch that, then maybe I could see my swing better somehow. So it was definitely almost through the lens of a camera. That's very much where our visualization led. And then as I started to get older and either got introduced to different professionals that helped me with different guided meditations, because once you go through one guided meditation that has really helped you, then all of a sudden it's like you have this new tool that you can use on your own. I started to get way more and more into the first person, to the point where, a lot of us think that we need to be in complete silence or darkness with eyes closed and being able to visualize. You could get to the point where you see a pitch low and outside, and you take a step out of the box, you take a deep breath, and you can almost, with your eyes open, visualize yourself crushing that in the opposite field gap, and then you step back in the box. It really doesn't necessarily have to be so intense, I guess. It can really be these little snippets that provide you with some clarity for what you want to do, obviously, in your next pitch or next at bat.
Well, you hear so many athletes that failure that they've had fuels them, mm-hmm. right? Michael Jordan says, I can't remember his quote, but he has a famous quote about all of his failures that have made him successful. So when visualization, it's no different. You still have to block out those failures of your past to better your future. But how do you go about doing that? Because that's a tough thing. First of all, visualization, it's very tough in general. But mm-hmm. when you're trying to visualize for future success, it's hard not to think about those past failures as well, right?
Yeah, I think I I actually talked to our sports psychologist about this in college because I realized, I was like, wait a second. When I think of those strikeouts on TV, when I think about the error I made at the World Series, when I think of those things, I'm getting a very instantaneous reaction. I'm getting that increase in heart rate. I'm getting like the nervousness feeling, that sinking, like, anxiety essentially coursing through my system.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what to do about that. And they guided me a little bit through reliving those situations. And, as crazy it might seem, we like, why are you reliving an anxiety ridden moment? It's reliving it and processing, okay, this is what happened. Now go ahead and replay it and replay it with a different mental preparation and find yourself being successful in that moment. Good. Now replay that exact same moment happening again this year. Replay yourself at the World Series again with, runners on base, whatever it is, and finding success in that moment. And that practice, when you go through it a few times, it all of a sudden, you're like, wait a second, this doesn't seem so bad. This isn't, and that anxiety provoking reaction that you get all of a sudden doesn't seem so strong. So you've essentially, and it makes sense, right? Like, if there's something that causes you some anxiety and you're able to be guided on how to handle it and deal with it, and you go through it 4, 5, 6, 7 times in real life, then all of a sudden you start to get better at it, right? And you're like, okay, I'm gaining confidence now in how to deal with this. Your visualization is your opportunity to do it without actually having to experience those failures on the biggest stage 7, 8, 9 times. Because, when you play in college, you get 4 chances, right? You get 4 years to go to the World Series. You don't, and you don't want to have to waste any. And so this is your chance to go through that and really learn from it and gain confidence from having experienced it in a certain way.
I hope that there are sports psychologists across the country with athletic programs that are implementing these visualization techniques and talking about this, because this visualization, it needs to be talked about a lot more than what it is. And I'm sure that behind closed doors people are talking about it, but it really needs to be taken seriously with athletes at any Division I program, in my opinion, any real program in general.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't have to be such a daunting. People look at it like, oh, that's another habit I got to add to my thing. That's another. It doesn't have to be such like so imposing into your normal schedule. And for even coaches who don't have, I think maybe some coaches listening to this or parents are like, well, I'm not a D1 program, right? It's me and 12 girls or 12 guys on a team. There's so much stuff you can find online. There is so many YouTube videos, recordings, whatever it may be, for guided meditation. It's like, hey guys, either it's a rain delay or you're at practice. It's the first 5 minutes. We're going to give this a try. And I can guarantee you're going to try it in a team setting, and you're going to get those 1 or 2 people who are like, this is so stupid, and they can't keep a straight face. You're going to get a couple of people that afterwards are like, I don't know if I got anything out of it. But then you're going to get maybe the 6, 7, 8 people in the middle that are like, wait a second, that I felt something there. There's something to be worked on. So you might not get 100% buy-in right away, but when all of a sudden, whether it's the best player on the team or the person who's playing the best or someone who wasn't doing well that's all of a sudden doing well is like, yeah, I can hang my hat on the fact that visualization helped me, then you're going to start to see that buy-in happen from the rest of the team.
Yeah. And everything we talk about, we're 50 episodes in now of cross functionality. Everything we talk about here is for high level athletes. If you want to be a high level athlete, and of course, the power of visualization, our topic today, that is one of the key factors. I'll be sure to subscribe again, Apple, Google, Spotify. Find us on social media at Jim Tara and at Coach Cassie RB on Twitter, at Coach_Cassie RB on Instagram. We're talking today again, power of visualization, and emails too, Jimbo Podcast.
That's right.
At gmail.com. Almost forgot. Before we get to a couple of other traits here of visualization, I do want to ask you, when you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, I think it was episode 48 of Cross Functionality, about your struggles in the outfield. When you had that opportunity, we talked about seeing opportunity, and you took that opportunity playing right field or playing the outfield, and you were struggling a little bit. How did the visualization get you out of that rut, and learning that new position? And I shouldn't say the physical rut, but mentally, because it was not an easy transition for you, as you documented a couple of weeks ago.
Sure. It was one of those things where I certainly tried visualizing a lot. And I can say I eventually got good enough to play Division I softball for a top 5 team in right field. Right. So I think a lot when I didn't just visualize, I didn't just work on it in the outfield physically. But what my thought is that any visualization I did, it was almost like adding a little acceleration to my physical game. That's really what it is. It's not going to be this light switch that all of a sudden you've never played alpha before. You can think about it and then all of a sudden you can do it. It's just going to make everything you're doing in practice physically that much more enhanced. So it's going to accelerate your track a little bit more. But what I would say is something really interesting that we did was we sat down with a heart rate monitor and you got to see your heart rate on the screen. And coach came over and started talking to me about outfield and was like, last outfield practice, you had a hard time diving. This ball like just brought up outfield and was trying to purposely provoke high anxiety out of me. And then once that heart rate went up, she's like, good, now calm it down. And so we had to practice calming that heart rate back down again. And then she'd start talking about the outfield again, and start talking about, right field. Like this is something you're really struggling with. How are you going to work on this? My heart rate go up again? And she'd be like, good, calm it down. And we calm it back down again. So it was, that was a really cool practice, because talk about feeling like you could be in control of something, come game time, you have a big lefty hitter come up and you're in right field, and I would start to feel that anxiety rise. And I'm like, no, I worked on this, calm it back down, So that was a different form, if you will, but that was super cool to do as well.
And so it was amazing the technology you guys had back in 2008.
Yeah, but a simple heart rate monitor, right? Like on a screen wasn't, I feel like that came up, you can do that at a doctor's office almost.
I can only imagine what the technology for some top level Division I programs, baseball and softball, what kind of technology they have now.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about it with football, and you hear it's incredible. I mean, you can make the argument that some of the technology that's out there that is being employed by these colleges is better than some player development technology, or maybe some player development systems throughout Major League Baseball have taken those ideas. Because look, there, this too, with your experience with the Pirates, there is no budget when it comes to player development. Like, the front office people, executives, they will throw money at player development any way they possibly could. But
I could tell you about Alabama football's visualization meditation room if you'd like.
I would love that. Please do. So Alabama's visualization meditation. So is this like a nap room, or what is?
I don't. It's kind of just like, I guess it's like a reset room.
Okay.
But it's super, super dark lighting, and they have like, you could pick what color light you want, and it'll only pop up at the top. So it almost looks like you could pick like blue lights or red lights or whatever it is. And it's like almost like a quiet room, right? So it has that padding so that you don't, like, sound doesn't echo, sound doesn't come in. And you put these headphones on and you lay on this table, and this table, it almost feels like you're about to lay in a plastic bag, and you don't really understand what's going on at first. And then that plastic bag fills with water to give you the sensation that you're floating. So as you're laying on this floating thing with like complete quiet, and it's dark but not complete dark. And then you can choose to listen to something. You can choose for it to be silent. And that's where you can have your meditation or visualization sessions.
So like a waterbed, essentially.
Yes.
Right.
But that waterbed too, it'll be warm, and the temperature will adapt to your body. It's something.
Okay. So what, if you know, I don't know if you do know, but what kind of audio suggestions were made?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I know it's a noise canceling headphone. Yeah.
I would love to know what that audio playlist is offering for players. You don't hear that though at the professional level. I guess it's different. I understand.
Yeah. Who knows?
But I can only imagine how much that costs. Now, I'm sure how do you think Nick Saban reacted to that idea when it was presented to him?
You know what? He's such an old school. I
was going to say, right.
Phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if anything, he's adapted, right? Like he obviously rolls with it because he's been successful through lots of generations. So.
Right. Yeah. They had to put that into his practice plan. Can you imagine? What's that story about him where when he first got to Alabama, he made like a 2-year booklet of every single practice that he was going to have over the next 2 years and planned it out that way?
I believe it.
So let's talk about tactics for visualization, how to make it easy, right? Because I think visualization can be very, very tough. We talked about earlier in the episode about meditation. That's also very, very tough if you're not completely focused. Visualization is the same thing, especially as you get older as an athlete. collegiately, professionally, and your mind is wandering. Kids are no different too because their minds are all over the place. But what are some tactics for visualization that could make it a lot easier and better for the athlete so it's more beneficial?
Sure. I think people try to kind of overcomplicate it or maybe take off a big bite of this when it really just needs to be small introductions at first. So I don't think it needs to be an hour. I think you can honestly just tell yourself, I'm going to set aside 5 to 10 minutes a day, and you start with that. And try not to. Same thing when you're trying to develop a habit. You don't want to force something. You don't want to say, okay, I have a completely packed schedule. Let me force 5 or 10 minutes more into it. Maybe you say, okay, listen, I'm going to wake up 5 to 10 minutes early, and I'm just going to start with that. Or you know what? I'm going to leave for the game 5 to 10 minutes early and just stay in my car for that time to do it. Then you can put it into your schedule in a very seamless way. The more distractions, the harder it's going to be. So if you're in a packed room, if you're in a room that has a lot of noise, whatever it may be, it's going to make it really difficult on you. So if you can eliminate those distractions, your phone included, and I would say the only reason you would have your phone potentially present is if you're listening to something that's guided. But having those do not disturb features on is extremely valuable. If you can avoid having your phone near you, that's even better. Because whether we like it or not, even the presence of our phone, we've become so addicted to it. It could be in do not disturb mode. If it's in the same room as us, it is a distraction to us because of the potential notification we could get. So, it is super interesting how that phone could distract, the type of visualization we want to get into. But I think those are probably the two biggest things. Just avoid those distractions and try to set that time aside that is conducive to your schedule, and then just be patient. It's not going to happen right away. And like I said, if I was trying to play right field and I visualized once or twice and I still wasn't getting it right, I would have given up a long time ago. You really do have to view it as a work now, see the benefit later on. That delayed gratification is certainly something that you're going to get with visualization. It's not going to happen just like that, just like any new skill you're trying to learn.
What kind of pregame routine would you suggest for people when it comes to visualization?
I think just trying to add it into whatever pregame routine you currently have. So I personally like to, before I left for the game, I would watch some videos, I would journal, and that worked for me. So that made sense that I would visualize then. I had some teammates who, if they started thinking about the game that soon, they would burn themselves out come game time. So their visualization would happen more at the clubhouse for 5 to 10 minutes before they went out on the field. But I think the main point is this is part of your preparation. So if this is something that you would rather do off the tee at practice, so for instance, let's say you're hitting off the tee and you're like, man, I've been doing the same drills over and over again. Well, pick 10 swings to do visualization with, where you take a step out, you have a 1 minute timer set, and you're just trying to visualize yourself being in the game. That's it. Nothing crazy. What cleats are you wearing? What socks you're wearing? What pants are you wearing? And you kind of work your way up the outfit, right? And this is my uniform. It's a night game, and I'm looking out, and who am I playing? And that's the person I'm playing. And you put one foot in, you go through your entire routine with the tee, and then finally, when it comes time for her to pitch, you just open your eyes and you take your swing. And sure, it's going to take you way longer to get through 10 swings than if you just were to take 10 swings. But how much more of a high quality setup are those 10 swings? And I used to go as far over the summers of I would have my walk-up song play in my headphones, just the first 14 seconds. I'd practice walking out of the dugout, walking up to the plate, taking a swing. And, I might only have taken 20 swings that day, but I was like, those were my game-like swings.
Another benefit to watch the show, Cassie literally was just visualizing right there in front of us, had her eyes closed as she was detailing that in an artful form. So hats off. Kudos to you, my friend. So when it comes to visualization, I think this is the final point we should make here today. There's a lot of ways you can go, whether it's fielding, whether it's hitting, if you're a pitcher, hitting your spots, whatever case may be. How do you consolidate all of that to make it into one really good visualization routine where you can cover all of those aspects?
I really do think it's going to be trying to figure out what works best for you. It's so hard. There's really not going to be a one size fits all approach, but start off with a one size fits all approach and see. It's almost like you're sampling. It's like you never had fruit before and you're trying to sample. Is it pre-game? Is it pre-pitch? Is it during my tee work? Is it before I go to bed at night? Is it when I first wake up in the morning? Do I like guided? Do I not? Do I like doing this with a teammate? Do I not? You're sampling all these different types of fruit, and then you're like, I really like apples. I'm really gonna focus in This is the one that seems to work the best for me. And then I think you go from there. It doesn't, again, it's hard to say there's not a science to it, because there certainly is, but it doesn't have to be a specific, you have to do this at this time, this place, because everyone's brain is different. The way you perceive things are going to be different. And so you're going to start to figure out over the course of time what works best for you.
Yeah, I've never ate melon. I haven't eaten melon since I've been 3 years old. I would, before games, I'll eat bananas. I don't really like bananas either, but I still eat them to this day because they're good for you. No, I don't like melon. When I was 3 years old, went to Disney. Long story short, I had melon that whole night. I was throwing up. Haven't had melon since
There you go.
1993.
Not for you.
Next week, we're shifting gears a little bit. Episode 51, Bat and Hand Path. We're going to be talking about that. The difference, the similarities between the two. We did an episode on this, Jake Epstein and I, on the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast, and I can't wait to get your opinion on Bat and Hand Path as we shift gears and talk hitting next week. Do you have anything coming up?
No, we are, if you look at our Instagram, we are expanding out the backside of our building. So our turf is expanding, which we are excited about, but is also equal parts frightening. But our media guy's doing a great job documenting the expansion, which looks pretty cool. So just as far as if you're in-house athlete, we're getting excited for that.
All right, very good. Thank you for listening, everybody. Be sure to subscribe and watch the show. Email us too. Your questions, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com, and we will talk to you next week. Take care.